Secretary Collins, good to see you. Welcome back to the show.
It's good to be with you, Sean. Hope you've been well.
I have. I just, I want to remind viewers well, you're laughing because I know you know this. The last time you were with us, you were former Congressman Doug Collins on a panel show. And it was funny because you were in West Palm for America First Policy Institute event. And I saw your video was on, you're going back on the fourth with the audio off. And I was telling my team, I said, it's just, there's something about in Palm Beach right after the election, something's going on. And I flew down that night and sure enough, Doug Collins, literally as the show goes on, it's announced Doug Collins nominated to be VA secretary.
It's pretty amazing. It all comes out just by being on Sean Spicer's show. You get into the cabinet. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty good.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me just start with this. You put out this video. I want to play it for folks about the savings that you guys have already found in the Veterans Administration. Let me just play what you put out for viewers.
Hey everybody, it's been fast paced and I keep coming to you with what we're doing, and today I've got a number. I got some big news for you. And look, this is why we talk about efficiency and getting the job done for veterans here at the VA. Right now, I've just been told we are just the first step of almost $2 billion, that's billion with a B, that we found in contracts that are cutting. Those are things that we're saving now that we can put back into healthcare, benefits, making sure that we're doing what the VA is supposed to do, and that is health and veterans benefits. Stands to reason. But hey, you got to see this. I've been giving this report. It says we were taking millions of contracts in dollars in contracts to create things like PowerPoint slide and meeting minutes. Folks, if you don't know how to run PowerPoint slides, learn. It's a tutorial on your computer. Go learn for free. It's okay. Take your own notes. Wow, I'll send you one of my pencils if you need one, but we're not paying millions of dollars for consultants to do this for us. Also, I found out coaching and training. Millions of dollars in contracts for coaching and training. If you need coaching and training, that's what you have in a supervisor. And if your supervisor can't coach you and train you in their job, then I tell you what, let me know. I'll come help you. We'll be ready to go. And also this last one kills me. It was millions of dollars for executive support. I love you and I support you, but we can figure out how to do things on our own. We don't need outside people coming in to help us with executive support. Look, these are going to be more coming. This is going to have some details that are going to be coming out for you. And also, there's more contracts coming. So this is just the first of all, right at $2 billion. We got almost there. There's going to be more coming. But let me let you know, don't feed the line of what DC's wanting to tell you. We are putting money back to veterans health, back to veterans benefits. And don't let nameless sources, even senators and House members who want to scare you, and media who want to perpetuate the line, we're taking care of the veterans. I promise you that from day one.
So how did this come about? Did you just walk in and say, guys, start showing me what we're spending money on? Did Doge come to you? Did other employees come to you and say, Mr. Secretary, you got to see what we're wasting our money on?
Yeah. No, Sean, it's a great question because, look, there's been no shortage of people willing to give me advice in what's going on. I'll tell you that. But no, we do have a couple folks who are our VA employees, but they're a liaison with Doge and looking at that because, again, President Trump came in and through his executive orders and through others said, hey, let's look at what we're doing here. And so that's where this started. And today, and actually right now, coming out in the next little bit, is sort of a furtherance of what we talked about last week on that video, actually going into the process in which we've done it, because there's a lot of media out there that want to think that we just, all of a sudden said, okay, we're just going to chop these up. It doesn't matter where they come from. And there's nothing further from the truth. I mean, they've been looked at multiple times. Some we would look at and they were going to be cut. And then we looked at it and said, wait, well, let's hold on this one because it may have a veteran facing aspect, and we'll talk about maybe even de-scoping it or something later on and finding out how the best way to spend it. But that's really where we came out with this, and we're continuing to look, because here's something that most people don't realize, that in the last 4 years under the previous administration, the budget of the VA went up almost $130 billion, and they added almost 80,000 people. Okay. When Trump administration 1 left, the backlog on VBA, our veteran benefits group, was at about 40,000. It's now over 200,000. So we've seen the experiment in government of throw money at something and throw people at something to get it better, and we're seeing it not going in the right direction.
And so how much of this, as a member of Congress and as a veteran yourself, when you walked in the door, were you shocked at like what you saw and how it operates, or did you have a sense of what you thought it might look like?
Well, Sean, we've talked about this a little bit before in just government in general. It was not a complete shock because I've been on the Hill, and when you speak the language of the Hill, you understand this, that especially when it comes to VA or veterans and DOD, you and I both serve. And so we have an understanding that of what it means to serve, and what, as we look around and we see what's wasteful, what's not wasteful. But members of Congress who haven't served, and I found this to be true, and I'm not, picking on them or anything else, they tend to have more of a softer spot, if you would, in these areas. So we would have, we do stuff that is funding extra benefits, but yet we don't actually assign the money, or we're asking for things and put money to it that may not be the best solution. So I wasn't surprised completely, but yes, at the sheer scope of it. And when I look at things like homelessness and I look at things like suicide prevention, in which we're spending $3 billion on individually on homelessness and on the suicide issue. And it's been that number for about 4 or 5 years now. And yet we're still seeing 17 members have death by suicide. We're seeing 40,000 members, veterans who are homeless. Something's not right. So I'm asking the question and coming in it with fresh eyes to say, what's going on here? Why are we getting the same results but spending this amount of money? I was just with some county officials across the nation. I had about 2,000 of them here in DC. And I asked them the same question. I said, when you look at projects in your own, on a local level, don't you look for a return on investment? Don't you look to see if it's actually doing what you're supposed to be doing? And it was pretty amazing. Almost all were nodding their head in agreement. So this is simple of what we're doing, but that last part of that video, we can't not touch enough. You know it as well as I do. The media up here, especially feeds into the line of the previous administration and those who are just side with the government in particular, that you don't ask those kind of questions.
Well, that is interesting because I dealt with this when I was on the House Budget Committee 20 years ago. We talked about going after and rooting out stuff, and they'd say you're cutting a program. And I'd say you're not cutting it if you're rooting out waste, if you're getting rid of stuff that's not mission critical. That's actually helping. What kind of pushback do you get? Because I get it's both the mainstream media, I guess, but then it's also you've got this niche veterans, specific trade kind of media. Like, do you see a difference in that, or is it a collective blob that's like, resistant to any change?
Yeah, I don't think it's all resistant to any change. I mean, I think you've got some media that are a little more susceptible to it. Mainstream media, definitely. And they're getting fed by, frankly, members of Congress, and, others that it's interesting. From my friends across the aisle, they're attacking, saying we're cutting benefits or making healthcare worse. And the interesting thing is when our press people or we've asked, will give us examples, it's crickets. I mean, the press is not willing. Think about this. If I came on this show and I said, Sean, right now, President Trump is hurting veterans and healthcare's quality is going down. Wouldn't your next logical question is, well, sir, show me an example of that? Well, they don't ask that question. They just take it and run. So we have, members asking and basically fear mongering is what I call it, because they don't want to deal in the truth. In fact, we had one member, a senator, who actually accused us of cutting the veteran crisis line, which are the responders, which are the ones who answer the phones. And the truth of the matter, we didn't cut any of them. We did actually, on the first round, have some veteran crisis line responders back office staff that were originally scheduled to be let go. But when we saw that they were in that department, to be frank with you, Sean, we said, no, I don't even want the perception that a talking point that somebody could use to say we're hurting this veteran crisis line. So we kept them on. So, and we made cuts other places. So again,
but it goes back to the Washington part. I saw something you put out the other day where your response rate has actually gone up. I assume that's because of your leadership and reforms versus, again, this gets back to the Washington attitude is more money, more people, better. But my understanding is you've actually reduced wait times and number of cases.
Yeah, we're seeing that. And we started seeing this over the last little bit in what we're looking at. VBA, which is the veteran benefit side, which a lot of people have in contact with, is they closed 1 million cases disability-wise before almost a week and a half earlier than they ever have. We're seeing new ideas, which I've talked about from the minute I walked in here. They're actually looking at reorganization to how they can do it better. They're now taking cases that can be handled fairly quickly, pulling them out of the stack, so to speak. They're using computer AI and some other things to say, let's get these done, and then we move back in and move forward. So we're already seeing things like that. And one of the big issues is, we're continuing, and I've got some more information on this is look at how our health records and how our management systems are working. We've made great strides already. I got more coming on that real soon. But some of it was just simply me asking a question. And Sean, this is so basic, and I'm not, it's not a dispersion on anybody, but with me having the background that I have, I just come in and ask basic leadership questions. Why are you doing this way? And I also sort of joke that from my Baptist pastor days, I've heard we've always done it that way before for so long that I'm used to it. And we've banned that term at the VA. You can't come to me and say we've always done it that way.
I'm so sick. That's literally like part of the military culture. Well, it's always been done this way. And it's like, that doesn't mean it's good. Do you expect tomorrow in the joint address to get any kind of discussion of veterans issues?
We'll see. I think the president, I've said many times what his only real thought to me and requirement when I said, what would you like? He says, take care of the veterans and do so and then pass that, do so in a way that is effective and cost effective. And that's exactly what we're doing. So look, this president, all you have to do is look at what he did. And I think that's the key to what we're going to be doing here. In his term, we passed Mission Act, and also Accountability Act, where we can get rid of folks who shouldn't be here who are hurting our veterans. And I made it very clear: you're hurting our veterans, or you're hurting the mission of the VA. You're going to be dealt with, and be dealt with fairly soon. And some are finding that out right now. But what he's saying is how do we make this an idea that the veteran is getting what they've earned, but doing so at the best part? And when you look at Mission Act, this is something, Sean, people need to understand. How many times have you heard, well, I'm slow getting a response, or I can't get my appointment out in the community? Well, what we're actually finding, again, more to come. I'm only 4 weeks into this, barely 4 weeks come Wednesday. And I'm asking enough questions where we're finding out that there seemed to be more of a culture of trying to preserve the VA as it currently, is in buildings and mortar, brick and mortar, so to speak, than actually implementing the Mission Act, which was designed to help give community care. So if we're not doing our mission as law provides, then we're not helping our veterans. So we're coming back to that and saying, look, this is the law. It's not an option, and we're not in it for self-preservation. We're in it for the veteran.
It seems like to me, among the peer groups that I have, there's like two groups of people. There's the folks on the left who are hell-bent on forcing veterans to go to VA clinics and centers where there's long wait lines. And there's a lot of folks in Afghanistan and Iraq veterans who want the choice to go see a private sector doctor. And the Democrats seem to me hell-bent on maintaining the old status quo where you have to go to a VA facility where there's a long wait. It's hard to get an appointment, as opposed to allowing choice because they want to preserve the government aspect of it.
I think you're not far off there. And I think, look, I'm not, I think there's been some that we're going to get into this further, from a reasoning standpoint, but, and you'll see this coming out. But one of the things is that we've got to get into a culture, and I'm that GWAT generation. I'm that one you talked about, Iraq. I served in Iraq, we're all in this longer generation where there are some things, frankly, that the VA does extremely well. Okay. And that we're going to keep those in doing, but there's also ways that we can partner with our community, partner with other hospitals, and, look at ways that we can get the community doctors. Now, we're also not unaware that there are shortages of doctors, or shortages of specialty care in the community. So, I mean, we're having to deal with that aspect of it a little bit too. But, this should be a choice. And what I'm working with is, yes, our VSOs, I'm working with them. And by the way, I've been keeping, if they come to see me or want to talk to me, I'm telling them what's actually happening. And I want it to be that whether the VSOs or whether the nonprofits, I don't want it to ever be, where seemingly they're fighting the VA. And I think because we're all on the same page, and I've made this statement over and over again, and it's hopefully starting to wind true here at the VA. And that is that if a service member has to call their congressman or their senator to get the help that they've already earned, then we're failing at the VA. I've just set that as the ultimate standard. Because we've just sort of gotten used to it. Well, call your congressman, call your congressman. 60% of a congressman's constituent activities revolve around the VA, Sean. 60%. Just imagine what they could be doing if they didn't have people who had to deal with VA issues that should have been solved in a much better way from our side before it ever got to them.
Yeah, by the way, that assumes that like the congressman is good on constituent services. So
Yeah.
like and that's, I mean, to your point, that's the last resort, right? But if the congressman isn't big on constituent services, then they're getting failed twice. But you mentioned VSOs, these veteran service organizations,
Right.
the American Legion, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the VFW. There is a perception that some of us have that those guys are part of the problem. They get space in the VA. They're bought in on maintaining the status quo. Where do you come down on the role of VSOs in respect to like getting space at the VA and supporting the status quo?
Well, there's a lot of things that they do, well, DAV is excellent with disabled veterans. They provide rides. There's a lot of things that the Legion, there's things that we do well together. But my only problem I have is I want them to understand that I'm wanting them to work with us and say, how do we make things better? And if that means that we'll have to look at new and different ideas, then I'm going to encourage that as well and giving them the information that we need. Now, again, these organizations are also very similar to organizations out in the community. And this is where it gets into a discussion, and it's a needed discussion about what the membership and who the membership serves, just like the VA are we disconnected from the vast majority of veterans in those certain areas, or are we doing our best to reach out? And I think nonprofits, as you well know, have made a big influence to my generation, our generation, because they see, not the plethora of things to do. They see certain missions that they can attach themselves to. So we've got to have an understanding that we have generational issues here and again, I don't say this is anything new. The Rotaries, the Kiwanis, the Elks, the Moose, all those, civilian organizations, so to speak, have the same issue. How do you attract? My Kiwanis Club was one of the largest in Georgia, but yet if you looked across the average age was well over 45 years old. We're just not attacking the younger generation, and the veterans groups are seeing the same thing. And so they're looking at, and I've had conversations with them, and I think they're getting this, but it's sort of like the perception that what happens in Washington is a very minute point of what happens to our veterans across the country, because that's where it's actually happening. So we just need to work with them better on that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me you go walk into a Legion and the average age is like 80, but the Legion's trying to reinvent itself by basically saying, hey, we can get you more stuff. We'll get you more benefits. And that's not necessarily in the best interest of the country or the veteran. It's just that they have to prove their worth more and more.
Right. And here, look, the VA is here for any veteran who wants the benefit. Okay. If they've earned the benefit, whether it be a home loan, a student loan, GI Bill, whether it be health care, look, I think we're still at the VA right now and we've not done this, and we're going to have to. We've got to look 10, 15, 20 years down the road when my generation and younger than my generation are coming up for this GWAT group that has issues that they're now back into the mainstream. Maybe they're working at a public job. Have their insurance right now. They're dealing with stuff, but as they grow older, they may lose that. Well, that's where, there's a possibility for them to work with VA, but we're not ready in some ways to handle that if we're not willing to look beyond the walls of our buildings and into the community as well.
You mentioned something interesting that I've struggled with, benefits that you've earned. Mm-hmm. So when I got off active duty, you go through a physical and they're looking at me, and I've from time to time had a couple extra pounds, and they're like, oh, you've got early onset arthritis in your knees or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, well, I didn't really do anything to help that. I'm not really sure that I can blame the Navy for that. And they're like, well, here's your disability rating. And I told them at the time, I didn't get shot. I didn't get hurt. To me, I don't think that I earned that benefit. And I know I've had this discussion with several veterans. Some agree, some disagree. Dan Crenshaw, your former colleague from Texas, wrote a great book. I mean, there's a guy who literally earned everything and has taken very little because, he doesn't look at it like a sacrifice. That's the extreme. Where do you come down on someone like me? And because I look at this and go, I didn't get hurt because I was in the military. And their answer is, well, we can put your rating down at this because your eyes aren't as good as they were, or your knees. And I'm like, yeah, that's called getting old, or not eating healthy, or being overweight, or whatever it is. I'm like, I'm not really sure you can blame the military or the Navy for some of the ailments that I have.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna have a little bit different take here. I think I agree with what you're saying because I'm a veteran, who has been, looking into services, and I've been in, covered under private healthcare that I've had for a long time. But there may be a time when I do. I mean, I'm also one of the burn pit issues. When I was deployed, I lived right next to one for almost 6 months. So, look, we get all this issue, but part of this comes back to, Sean, a conversation we had when we started here, and that is Congress. And I love my friends up there dearly, but we've also got to have some understanding on what it means when you say we're going to put this bill out there. How can we target it to help those who truly need help, and make sure that the ones who may not want that help, they may want to get it somewhere else, has that ability as well. So it is a balance to look at, because some, especially rural healthcare, I think that's another issue where we need to partner with our rural communities. We don't need to be, the main line there, but we can partner with community hospitals in rural areas that we can serve our veteran population, but we can help them serve their civilian population in areas where they're struggling financially and everything else. So there's ways to look at that. But remember, when you have issues like the PACT Act, which was basically came forward in a State of the Union and was implemented just months later because the Biden administration wanted to do something without really a lot of discussion on how much it's going to cost. That's a problem. I mean, it's something that you got to deal with. You've got some good stuff coming up in the Elizabeth Dole Act, which is dealing with caregivers, which I think is now properly focuses on some of the end of life kind of issues. But again, I'm telling our folks here, I want you to get it right to start with, and don't just go up and say, okay, we'll just do this, and make sure that we have the financial resources to make it happen.
Yeah. By the way, I my viewers know I'm on the board of the Yellow Ribbon Fund. We focus on caregivers because it's an area where if you're getting your 50th or 20th or 100th surgery, and that caregiver needs some support, Yellow Ribbon has been amazing to step in and do the help. You've also been at the forefront of making some reforms.
Yes.
You got rid of DEI at the VA, and then I saw this tweet where you said the American flag binds us all who've worn the uniform. We will no longer be showing pride flag to the VA. Instead, we will be flying these flags for the rest of this administration and continue to put veterans first. Why do you think that was important?
Because we have enough that divides us, Sean. We need to get back to what unites us. And I think that is the thing that unites us. It doesn't mean, and I've had some people say that, well, I'm bigoted or small-minded or no, anybody is welcome to get, their service. There should be nobody treated badly for, that come to a VA because of anything in their beliefs or background. That's just a fact. You and I've dealt with this. We're in the military together. We get this. But what we're going to have is, instead of us emphasizing, the differences, or emphasizing one over other, we're going to simply put up the flag is there, the POW flag is there. Any other flags inside the facility are going to be VA flags or service connected flags that we have, because I think in the long run, that is what unites us and brings everybody in. I talked about this at the American Legion about a week and a half ago and got a standing ovation. It was one that they understood, they got it. And they understood also that this is not to push people out. In fact, it actually unifies us, because that is the one flag that is on all of our uniforms, is the United States flag.
Yeah. To me, this is a simple issue. We start going down this, it's a slippery slope, right? If you want to celebrate Pride Month, go do it. But I don't know why the government's in the business of choosing which lifestyles to support or to advocate for. The government should be flying the American flag, the service flags, and the POW and MIA flag. You mentioned that speech at the American Legion. There was something really impactful that caught my eye. You talk about something that's very near and dear to what veterans face. Let me play you this thing, because you talk about something that 17 veterans every day face. Take a look at the video, folks.
I need your help. Well, let me rephrase that. I don't need your help. There are 17 people today that do, though. Just think about this. Listen to this as I count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Who do you know that needs a call? Who do you know that might need a cup of coffee? Who do you know that just broke up with their spouse? Who do you know that can take some of the programs and the money we have and get them directed to that VA program? That's a great question. You have my commitment. We're going to continue to work on it.
You know, Mr. Secretary, I feel like we've been dealing with it in the military and then among the veterans community for decades. What can we do differently?
Well, we can't keep doing what we're doing. And that's my goal. I mean, some of what we do is working, but obviously, Sean, when you look at the statistics, we've averaged, and it's like the last 6 or 7 years, I saw a chart the other day, we've averaged between 6,300 and upwards almost 7,000 death by suicides of veterans each year, which averages out to about 17 a day. I mean, and you're spending $3 billion. This is the part that I want, and this is where we're looking at contracts. And so for anybody out there ready to jump on me, I don't know how many other contracts we need to map veterans populations to tell us that veterans are hurting. I think I'd rather spend that money and partner with our own VA folks, or maybe even partner with VSOs or nonprofits to say, why don't we actually have somebody going out and seeing them instead of mapping them, instead of charting where these things are happening? Why don't we actually go out and try and fix it? So one of mine, I can only, I try one, many things at a time, but this is my next big one that I'm coming to, because I'm going to start, after I've seen some of the numbers on homelessness and suicide, I'm not happy with where we are. Nobody can be happy with where we are. There's some things that are working, but there's a lot of things that are going to require more than just money, more than just a report, more than just another fancy PowerPoint, more than just changing the suicide prevention program every few years. I've been in the Air Force now for 23 years, and I'm willing to say I think they have tried 4 different approaches to curbing suicide. And at the end of the day, it all comes back to the same thing: being aware of your surroundings, being aware of your friends, and asking the question when they're hurting or they've changed or something's not right, asking them the question, are you okay? And if they're really bad, are you thinking about hurting yourself? You got to not be scared of the question. I've had this on the phone calls that I've made. I've had people sitting in front of me, and sometimes you want to be nice, but folks, their life is not worth it. I would rather a friend be mad at me because I asked them, are you thinking about hurting yourself, than to say nothing and they hurt themselves. We've got to get over this stigma of mental health. We've got to get over this stigma of addiction, and we've got to do things differently, because if we don't, it's not us that is paying it, it's those 17 a day.
Yeah. Last thing I want to ask you, because I agree with you, it's very, very powerful, and I appreciate your approach to this. I know a lot of departments pushed back on Elon Musk when he asked federal employees to say whether they did 5 things in the previous week. Where do you guys come down on that?
Do the email. I did one. Look, Sean, and I say this, I respect what they're trying to do. We got 470,000 plus employees. Okay.
How many?
It's pretty amazing. But, look, it's just out there. Fill out and even Elon said, just send something like, I worked on this. Just, again, making contact and making sure that we're all working together. But I will tell you this, that is an important piece, that we all are working together. But also, if I have employees who that is really, really dragging them down, then come on, we got to do better here, because there's much more important jobs out there that we have. And it's nothing more than a check-in that everybody else outside, typically, of government life. I've worked outside, you've worked outside in consulting. People want to know what you're doing. And it's not
not hard. In the military, we have to do it every year. In the Navy, we call it a fitness report. You have to say, here's what I did this year. I mean, this isn't tough. I'm sorry. I have one more quick question for you, because I know on these a lot of federal government employees are rightly concerned about their future. Veterans get veteran preferences when it comes to hiring in the federal government. Is there concern about, for a lot of these folks that have served their nation and that they've gone on after the military service to serve in the federal government in some capacity, that they may now lose a job?
Yeah, there's concern about it, but I will have to say, Sean, across the government, you cannot go into any department of any measure of anything and not have veterans, just like you have veterans at Southwest Airlines, just like you have veterans at Caterpillar, just like you have veterans in, you know, in Silicon Valley and other places. And yes, there will be adjustments and changes that have already taken place in layoffs. And, you know, the personnel folks just the other day have said that we're looking at that again, but it's going to be targeted. Let me say this before we finish. We have exempted over 300,000 plus employees. We've exempted more positions than most companies in this country have people. Okay. And the reason we exempted those locations and other things is in our first round is because we want to make sure that we're not hitting our veteran in healthcare or veteran in benefits. We're going to make those tough decisions, but you know, right now, you know, the veteran population will, you know, be a part of that, but we're going to make sure that we do everything else to make that as a, you know, transparent and seamless as possible.
All right. Secretary Doug Collins, always appreciate you being here. I mean, it's amazing what appearing on the show did for you. So it's a little PSA. You want to get into the president's cabinet, come on the show. Thanks for all the work you're doing on behalf of those who have served our country. Really appreciate you spending your time with us today.
Thanks, Sean. Take care.
You bet. All right, guys, as I mentioned, tomorrow we've got Lindy Lee. She's going to respond to my accusations that she's a grifter. My buddy Dan Turntine will be here. And then an unbelievable post-State of the Union show with Hogan Gidley and others to talk about the response to the president's joint address, what we thought of it, so much great stuff. And Bill O'Reilly on Friday. Amazing stuff headed your way. And we will be live tomorrow night at 8:45. Thanks for kicking off your week with us. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the Sean Spicer Show.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.